Yeah, I don't know if there'll be enough deep to keep the bugs down.
That'll be good.
Capital C, CDL. No, it does.
Actually,
It's easy yet enough.
like as you're saying, you're charging.
Seconds to figure out.
Because I don't have my little charging hickey. Is it a bad pause? It's like, oh, is this a new technique? I forgot about the reset. It's like Jesse wants out of this meeting, man. You could try the other plug in the wall. I mean, it looked like the light was on before. Yeah, because I'm showing no juice.
Yeah, it's just this little power bank.
So we're gonna have to sit in each other's laps. Huh?
You can charge your like. Oh. We can switch.
I'm at what percentage? I'm at 30, which might be okay. Huh?
60.
Ooh. Sure, everybody's okay with that?
I usually like to do it just because of this racing, because I don't have to extend that car, but if this thing's not working.
Now I say I'm charging. Hey, Jared, is there another extension cord? We don't think this one works.
This little power bank, do we have another one?
The only one I have is over here.
Feel free to sit over here if you want.
Or he realized what went down.
Jesse and I will just.
He ran over a little
switch
girl in
seats
a crosswalk. And he was gonna be on.
Oh, yeah.
Should we get this party started, folks?
Carbondale has modern extension cords now.
All right, 7 p.m. Thank you, Kay. 7 p.m. on July 10th. Meeting of Carbondale Planning and Zoning Commission. Kay, can you please call roll?
Nicholas DeFrank,
Here.
Jeff Davlin is absent. Nick Michon.
Here.
Tim McGee is absent. Jared Mork.
Here.
Cindy Saplesio. Jesse Garcia.
Here.
Ann Krimmer.
Here.
Franco Palumbo.
Here. So some new items, top of the order here. Eagle eyes caught those. Jared, you want to give us an
Yeah.
update on 2.1, 2.2 today?
Yeah, certainly. So something we're adding into more of the agendas. We started with our Board of Adjustments meeting, but we figured it probably wouldn't hurt just as a quick heads up at the start of every meeting, just to kind of remind everyone who is voting when it comes to alternates regulars, since we're 2 regulars who aren't present, both alternates will be voting for tonight. And then just felt it's probably a good placeholder to have a conflicts of interest disclosure on every agenda, just in case people have any. Just have that standard time to raise those, discuss them, and then move on with the regular agenda items. So those are the 2 new items under roll call. So you guys can expect to see those moving forward.
Oh, and so they'll be on every agenda moving forward.
Yep.
It'll kind of predate or preface the meeting itself.
Yep.
Be that.
Just kind of right at the beginning. And then, if there is a disclosure on one of the items, we can discuss it. And it'll just help kind of with the flow of the rest of the meeting.
So a question on that, I mean, that might result in a person disclosing and then this commission kind of choosing that they should not be present for the meeting. And then they will have wasted a trip here.
Correct, hopefully.
Maybe we can talk about kind of a pre-heads up. So to that, which might.
Yep. Go. Yeah, I think that's a great call. If you have something that you think's a conflict of interest, certainly give me a call. I'm happy to chat about it with you. If that's the only agenda item and we think it's a conflict, to your point, Nick, I think it's probably best to just not attend the meeting unless we have some sort of quorum issue and we need someone there just to continue a notice public hearing. With that being said, there are situations where there's the potential of conflicts of interest that someone would want to disclose that might not disqualify them. And this would be an opportune time just to bring that up. For example, I think on a previous one or at the Board of Adjustments, some people disclosed that they had worked with the applicant years ago on a different project in a different location, but aren't currently working with the applicant. The Board of Adjustments discussed that, determined that wasn't a conflict of interest, but it was good just to disclose that to make sure all information's above board and there's no rationale for someone to challenge a decision by this body or the Board of Adjustments.
Yeah. And our usual kind of process has been to hear out the person who has a potential conflict. But to the point where we're talking about, I think it's really great to talk with Jared first. Those of you that didn't know, I was out the last 2 meetings. By the way, thank you all. Thank you, Jared, for wielding the gavel.
Yeah.
And thank you all for having, it sounds like it was a really great couple of meetings and it went very smoothly. A good conversation anyways. So I am currently working, or my firm is working with that client on another project. So I self-selected out knowing that I could not be impartial in that situation. And I wouldn't want to ask all of you to weigh in on that either, because it just feels like a lot of pressure internally on our happy family here. So it was really helpful to talk with Jared about it. Got that heads up early on. It was very easy to go through. So highly recommend folks, just if you have a thought, call the big man or the guy in yellow. Yeah, but good to see it on here. And yeah, save yourself a trip. If you think you have a question, it's a quick call. But
Sure,
cool to see that. So
Like Jared was saying, though, I think point of clarification is that like if there's one item on the agenda, then yeah, just don't show up. But if there's, I don't know, 2 items or something that you feel like you could contribute to and not have a conflict of interest, I think that's where.
it's interesting. We've gone back and we've had differing situations on that in the past. There have been times where if there's a conflict, you just remove yourself from the meeting.
Yeah.
But I like the idea, like what George just described, where you're only out for that one section.
Mhm.
It feels more appropriate. I guess I shouldn't say I like it. It feels more appropriate.
Mhm.
Is there any kind of guidance on that?
That's my preference. If
Okay.
you're only conflicted out on one agenda item and we have multiple,
Mhm.
I think it's worth participating in the ones that you can participate in and just stepping outside the room during that one agenda item. Go read the Soper Sun for however long it takes and, we can pull you back in after that. Alternatively, if there's only 2 agenda items, we could flip the order if everyone's present so that you can participate and then leave after that and hear the other agenda item. So.
Great. Sounds good. Glad to see it on here. Thanks for putting this in there. Can we move on to consent? Anything we need to close up on that or just, okay, great. All right, so approval of meeting minutes from the June 26th meeting.
No comments. Thank you, Kay.
If there are no comments, I will look for
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes
that.
Second.
session.
All right, Jesse has it. Jared, second. All right, number 4, public comment for items on the agenda. Are you here for public comment, sir? All right, would you mind coming up to the lectern, please, and name and address for the record?
And I'll write this down here too.
Great, thank you so much.
My name is Kenny Titler and I live at 206 South 3rd Street here in Carbondale. Just give me a minute to write that down. And I'm here to, now that you, to talk about the what you're bringing up with the ADUs. And I'm specifically here to give my support for allowing OTR to have detached ADUs. I know I read through your packet and at one point it said there was very few people who had been in that situation. I was one of the people who had turned in an application and hoping to build a detached ADU to only find out that I was in that 6 square block area that doesn't allow that. And I was happy to see that it was recognized by the community as an area of to be examined, and that also that the P&Z along with the Carbondale Historic Preservation Commission also brought it up as areas that they would like to see further talked about. My reasoning for wanting to be able to build an ADU and be able to have that access to do it as a detached unit is we would like to have my mother-in-law come live with us, but we don't want her living with us.
What do you mean? I can't imagine.
And she on the same hand doesn't want to be there also. Her mother was in the same situation, lived with her sister in a detached unit. And so to still be able to give that independence, where at the same time as being able to be there to see what's happening. And then in the future, after that time that she would be there, we would love to be able to offer it up as an affordable housing area. And if it was to be an affordable housing area, we would like it not to be sharing a wall with somebody who we were renting to. We would much rather it be a little bit of distance to have that displacement. And I think as you're talking about the character, I understand as being a big part of wanting to preserve that OTR character and making sure that it's taking the historical part into effect. I think that is another reason why detached would even be good, because having it in the back corner of our house, of our yard space away from the street facing, I think would take away, versus if we were just to build on even more to the outside and having the street scape of it taking up more of that unit. So I guess I would just want to say that I very much would support it and would hope that, and I read the part about how the state is looking of trying to move that way also. But just as, again, I know wanting to have that affordability, I am a board member of the school district. We are very well aware of the affordability complex of what's happening here in town and being able to afford places to rent. And again, just to say it one more time, that we would rent that out, but we probably wouldn't rent it out if it was attached to our house because of that privacy bit. And so just, I hope that you all move forward with this, and I'm thankful and glad to hear that it is an agenda item that you're all looking at. So thank you. And I'll listen to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak here tonight and also to listen in. Appreciate it.
Kenny, might I also suggest coming on August 28th? and sharing that?
coming August 28th
Yeah, if you would please attend and share your opinions then as well. that'd be great.
definitely come August 28th.
Great. Okay, do we have anybody else online tonight to be aware of? Zip, okay. Great, well, with that, we will close public comment and move on to our action item for the evening. ADU action. Jared, you want to bring us into this one? Or
Yes,
Ellie?
certainly.
On it?
So this has kind of been a long time coming. A lot of it's been due to staff availability and limited capacity. But as you can see in the packet, we really began discussing ADUs pretty much shortly after the comprehensive plan update was completed. So back in 2023, there was a few check-ins with I'd say 3 most involved boards and commissions regarding ADUs: Historic Preservation Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Board of Trustees. We held work sessions with each one just to kind of understand goals, desires, hopeful outcomes. And we included some summary of those conversations in kind of page 2 of the 1-2 of the staff memo, but included the minutes of each one of those meetings for your guys' review. Largely the feedback that we got was very consistent from all 3 boards. It's how can the town expand opportunities for ADUs, look to streamline the process to make it quicker and easier to get approval for an ADU. How can we allow varying sized ADUs, things that can accommodate accessible units? And then how can we ensure that they're compatible with the existing buildings, the primary structures, historic structures that we have on properties throughout town? And so, just kind of given that feedback, there's a lot of alignment for everyone. In this memo, I really wanted to just set up and kind of say, here's where we're at today with ADUs. Here's the information that we have today regarding ADUs. Ultimately, what we're asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to do is to initiate a code text amendment, direct staff to notice a public hearing, invite the community to provide feedback, and really start discussing regulations in a public forum. So that's not what we're trying to do tonight, discuss the regulations, but really try to look at what do we have and what information do you all need to make educated recommendations to the Board of Trustees who will ultimately make the final decision.
Quick question.
Yes.
For those of us that are not familiar with a code text amendment change process, could you briefly walk us through that?
Yes. So a code text amendment, there's only 2 bodies that can initiate one on behalf of the town, either the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Board of Trustees. The process is essentially a code text amendment is amending only the Unified Development Code. So the process involves a noticed public hearing, no different than a land use application, except that we provide notice in the paper and there is no 300-foot notification rule because it's generally applicable to the entire community. The public process, once it's noticed, would include, at minimum, public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission, a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Board of Trustees, public hearings before the Board of Trustees, and ultimate action by the Board of Trustees through an ordinance, either approving or denying those amendments. Due to the scope and of our accessory dwelling unit regulations, this code text amendment would also include a hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission, because they have a vested interest due to the unique requirements on ADUs regarding historic properties. So this one, after the Planning and Zoning Commission provides at least some initial framework to recommended codes. We'll go back to the Historic Preservation Commission, ask for their feedback on what this body has thinks is reasonable regulations, and then come back to this body with Historic Preservation's recommendations for some sort of ultimate recommendation from this body. A lot of recommendations.
A little bit of back and forth, yeah. Is
but-
staff drafting that and both commissions are basically commenting on that, or how does the actual writing of the,
Of the code?
yeah, how
Yep.
does that get crafted and drafted?
So the code will be drafted by us.
Mhm.
We'll ultimately work with you guys on some draft language. We'll take that draft language to the Historic Preservation Commission on changes. They'll get comments, we'll bring it back to this group. Likely before a final recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, we'll check in with our legal team and have a legal review to make sure how we've drafted the language is proper, legally defensible, works within the confines of our zoning code. And then we'll ask you guys to make a recommendation up to the Board of Trustees.
And as far as timing on all this, what is the perfect arc or generally the hopeful arc? How about that?
Anywhere from 1 month to multiple years. Now, in all seriousness, I think, looking at some of the other code amendments that we've discussed here,
Mhm.
we're probably looking at 3 or 4 meetings before the Planning and Zoning Commission. One, to kind of look at different options and fine tune regulations or fine tune recommended language. Luckily, the cadence of our meetings allows us to fit a historic preservation review within that timeframe.
Got it.
So it's not like there'll be some gap and we'll have to wait. A historic preservation review will just occur
Within it.
within that
Yeah.
P and Z timeline.
Okay. Franco, did you have a question?
Yeah. I guess the way you're kind of going back and forth between at least us, the commission, and the historic preservation, it sounds like to me, the historic preservation is acting as a recommending body for us, and as we are a recommending body to the
Mhm.
Board of Trustees. Is that what I'm getting at?
That's correct.
Okay.
The reason, and normally because they're a recommending body to you, we would go to them first. But I think their review is going to be most effective if they have something to respond to.
Right.
And that's where I think this group having a little more expertise within applying these codes and understanding some of the processes, drafting some of the changes will give them something to respond to and make their review a little more effective.
Question, once it's approved, does it go into the code immediately or is there a lag, and so the board approves it? Then what happens? How long does that take?
Typically, it's roughly a 30-day period from the Board of Trustees adopting an ordinance.
Until it goes into effect?
Until it goes into effect. The Board of Trustees could determine it's an emergency and could have it effective immediately. I don't think that's necessary in this case.
Okay.
But yeah, with any ordinance, there's a 30-day protest period where someone could
Okay.
protest any action of the trustees.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. So, kind of what we have before you is on page 3 of the staff memo is really what we have today. We have essentially 2 types of zoning. We have straight zone districts and we have PUDs. The regulations that we're looking at adopting largely are only applicable to the straight zone districts. The PUDs, there's some that the language would be applicable to, but the majority of them, they would not be applicable to. And one thing that we're working on is creating a map that kind of tries to categorize town into, are these regulations applicable, somewhat not applicable, or not applicable, based on oversimplification of a lot of complicated individual PUDs. And so, we will have that information ready at the noticed public hearing. As far as the development review process for ADUs, ADUs in our low density, ADUs are essentially required to receive a conditional use permit. In some instances, they're also required to have a minor site plan approval. The conditional use permit is something that can occur at a staff level. However, the minor site plan review has to be a notice public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that adds a lot of time to someone who's requesting to build an ADU. There's real costs associated with that, with the application, with the noticing, with all that. And so one thing that, is worth considering within these code amendments and worth you guys thinking about between now and the public hearing is there value in the P&Z having a review of an ADU, of all ADUs or only some ADUs, some certain situations? And I think it's really kind of worth thinking about what is appropriate, where maybe we can help reduce some of the process and get some of the very straightforward ADUs as a complete hypothetical and not digging into it. Could an ADU in a basement that doesn't impact any setbacks and any easements and anything like that just be a staff review? Whereas maybe detached ADU, complete new structure might
Visible from the
require
street.
a site plan review, or if someone's asking for a reduction in parking, or if maybe there's a set standard for an ADU size and someone can request something larger, would that trigger a hearing? So I think there's some things like that that could be creative in how the town looks at it, saying, maybe there's some instances where processes are worthwhile, but there's also a lot of instances where it's just go to a building permit. 1 second, I lost my spot in my notes here. And so I also provided kind of a very simplified summary of our current regulations. Those are things that we will discuss. I would anticipate a lot of the discussion being on the size and what's appropriate size-wise as a just arbitrary number or as a ratio compared to a primary unit. We've also included definitions so you can see how the town defines an ADU and where an ADU would or wouldn't be appropriate. And then lastly included kind of the sections of the comprehensive plan that essentially directed the town to look at this. That's where the town said that the town as a whole told the town governance, we want to educate people. We want to expand opportunities for ADUs. We want to consider allowing detached ADUs. Lastly, because we did discuss this in 2023, there was some unknowns with kind of what was going on at the state level. That's kind of been rectified to a certain degree. The state tried and failed to pass legislation regarding ADUs, and I included kind of a summary of that. There was a lot of stuff in those bills that a lot of communities were hesitant about, and a lot of it was related to local control of applying statewide regulations that negatively impact local situations like affordable housing and limitations on short-term rentals and things like that. But one thing I think Carbondale was really excited about was that one of the bills had a preemption of PUDs, where a PUD wouldn't be able to restrict an ADU. Unfortunately, that didn't pass. So we're under the current regulations where PUDs are still in place, and whatever our local regulations are regarding ADUs are the regulations for ADUs. And so, you know, again, we haven't had a ton of ADU requests since I've been here. I can probably count on one hand the number that have actually been discussed and approved. So, you know, I don't know if there's some level of bandit ADUs out there, or if there's some level of people already discussed ADUs prior and the regulations haven't changed and just don't want to pursue it, or if even if we open up the doors, there's really not going to be a rush for ADUs. Don't know, but when we've applied these regulations on page 5 of the staff memo, we kind of included some of the feedback we heard from people and kind of what we've been seeing. And so I think those are some good places to start for how we might talk about some of the regulations we have, some of the things that we've seen. So really, you know, I think the purpose of this is hear from you guys. Is there other information that we could be providing you that we can work on here in the next month to assist you guys with discussing ADU regulations? Is there a different way we can provide the information that would be easier for you all to consume? Are there certain big topics that you just know you want to start diving into and would be good for us to kind of have some thoughts on without getting into any specifics? You know, I think it's really helpful for us to have that kind of 30,000-foot feedback from you all so that we can be prepared. And then ultimately we are asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to initiate an amendment to the Unified Development Code, and we included a motion. Again, we are anticipating that we would have a public hearing, the first public hearing on August 28th. And so if we get this initiated, we can get public notices out in the paper and be ready to begin those conversations at that meeting. Happy to answer any other questions you all might have, or really just open it up to some dialogue.
I have one 40,000 square foot question for this. We talk a lot about affordable housing these days in Carbondale, and Carbondale is increasingly becoming less affordable. Kind of inverse lines on a graph, so to speak. We're working on that at a lot of levels. Is there precedent or examples of communities opening up a major move like this, where potentially every single family parcel becomes immediately more valuable, and it makes Carbondale a bit of a lightning rod for a whole new type of investor to come in and, you see where I'm going with this?
We can certainly look more into that. I know when we did an initial review, there were some communities that were discussing limitations. I don't know if it was going full on deed restrictions, but they certainly did things like prohibiting short-term rentals in ADUs.
Yeah.
And that was more in their short-term rental regulations. But I do hear you kind of remembering some of the conversations that occurred back in 2023. That was a discussion point. And I remember our mayor kind of, you know, whether it was a counterpoint or playing devil's advocate, saying, but in addition, an ADU and an income producing rental can also be what helps keep people in their current home who may not be able to afford rising mortgages, costs associated with the house. And so I hear you. I think it's a double-edged sword, right? It can help and it can
Totally, and I think Ben made a good point. I mean, for some folks, it might make a difference between being able to stay in a expensive community and not. I don't know if those two are really associated though.
Fair.
You know, I mean, it just might be, I guess where I'm going with this, just to kind of be clear is, you know, is there a precedent and how might we just to kind of like identify that in the big pot of potential impacts and just things to consider when we're talking about this with HPC, with BOT, and I guess the larger, greater public. I mean, and yeah, I think a lot of us are still super excited about this, but not getting out over our ski tips is probably a good idea as well. Just maintaining balance.
May I ask?
Yeah.
You know, I've worked in a couple of municipalities and I think there's examples out there that we could learn from. Other small towns, similar populations, similar goals. So I don't know if there's any language that, you know, we should be looking at in other jurisdictions and seeing their success stories. I think that could be helpful.
I think to further Franco's question, you know, like statewide, I want to know, or I wonder, like, which towns have the highest like ADUs per capita? Do we see ourselves aligning with those towns? And like, can we learn something from them? I think, I don't know, I'd be curious to know like where we sit within like the state of how many ADUs we have, and are we on a threshold or something? You know, I think that information would be.
Is that a general thing, or is it like sized mountain towns? Is there any kind of like framing that you think would be valuable in that, or just in general kind of per capita?
I think just per capita. I think that scales it just fine between everybody, right? I think to me that information would be used to find out if we're, you know, if our town kind of really aligns with that. Like, let's just say Aspen's like number one, right? Which it more than likely is. Do we find ourselves aligning with Aspen, or do we find ourselves more alignment with Crested Butte? And like, is it working for them? And can we learn from their code? And like, that's how we would narrow down specifics of which codes to reference. Is it successful? Are they, I mean, I think these are a little bit extra, but are they short-term rentals? Or are they, you know, rented for years on end, or like who's occupying them? I think that's just from my own experience, and like when I do an ADU, and it's not really an ADU. I want to ensure that that's what we're trying to avoid.
What is it?
More square foot.
So up valley ones where they're using it to circumvent the max square footage allowed.
Yes.
Going on for a long time.
I've been on record.
Well, I must say it's interesting. When I was working for Salida, you said you only processed maybe a handful of ADUs. Similar size town. I must have been processing, you know, 8 to 15 a year. A lot of more infill. And it was more of a administrative review process. Unless it is within the historic district, then that would go to the Historic Preservation Committee, of course. I'm just tossing my example out there because I am aware of it, but I'm sure there's other examples out there that we could learn from.
Were those like new square footage, or were they repurposing existing square footage? Because I think that could be an important thing that we look at.
I can think of both. You know, some people converting their basements, let's say, but then a lot of times we, you know, in our code in the UDC, we talk about the location of an ADU. It has to be behind in the backyard, off the alley, and there were small houses within Salida that were, you know, that could fit the ADU criteria. and people would build a new primary residence behind that house. So there was flexibility within the code that allowed for preservation of the old and development of the new in the rear.
And a lot of deep lot communities kind of have that opportunity to.
Yeah, the lot's typically 150 depth, so I don't know.
Deep.
Yeah.
Nick, you got something?
That is interesting, only in the sense that maybe we should consider our definition of subordinate dwelling units, because if it's, you know, if they're able to take the old building, which is on the front of the lot, that would be by definition, and turn that into an ADU, that then is not subordinate by our definition necessarily.
Clearly, right.
So, you know, does it make sense to look at that definition of subordinate dwelling units as a way to promote that type of scenario?
Nick, are you saying subordinate like secondary structures, primary structures? Or like-
Yeah, what is a subordinate dwelling unit? I mean, normally it's a subordinate dwelling unit. A subordinate dwelling unit is smaller. And it's also, I think, considered to be on the frontage of the lot, facing the street.
Wait, a subordinate unit is on the front of the lot?
Sorry, a primary.
Okay,
Subordinate
thank you.
would be
Rear of the facade.
Right, it would
Yeah.
be behind the primary unit in a long skinny lot like what we have in Carbondale. But that scenario that they're running into in Salida, where you could turn that primary unit into your ADU and then build a whole new building on the backside of the lot. That's what you're describing, right?
Yeah, as long as the primary or the old unit can meet the new
Right.
ADU square footage.
Right, that's really interesting.
So let's totally this, because I actually spent time writing that code for an urban design firm for years that allowed that exact situation to happen. Communities wanted it. It was an opportunity similar actually to what we're talking about right now, where folks are like, we can build this, our families are growing, we have a new family member. When we have the lot, we have a long, skinny kind of shotgun style lot. We want to do this and then rent out our front building. It's more than a unit at that point. It's the whole original home.
Yeah, they're doing that in Bozeman a lot.
Yeah.
We have a house up there and we're doing the same thing. The little house is in the front, but the lot goes way back.
Yeah.
Building a bigger house in the back.
Totally.
I think a lot of areas that are bursting like Bozeman are doing that.
So it's an extreme scenario. I mean, how does this commission, who wants to weigh in on that? And that's, so if we talked about really blowing away from square footage maximums, if we talked about really opening this up, is anyone here open to that level of increase?
Definitely.
I think in certain areas it could work. I mean, definitely Old Town, there are still small miners cabins that, you know, if we allowed a larger ADU, they might qualify as being an ADU, and it might make historic preservation happy. I'm not sure.
I couldn't see it. You would know best here.
I don't know
To
where they're,
to have the historic home become a subordinate.
I mean, I don't know where they're at with it, but inclusivity, I think trumps, in my view.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think inclusivity really needs to come first, but HPC may disagree with that. Yeah, I don't know.
But from my recollection, from working prior on HPC or a lot of boards, that commissioners would say on the HPC, the best way to preserve an old residence is to use that residence.
Mhm.
So, you know, we're allowing, you know, people to use these residences and maximize them, whether it's an ADU or not. I think it's always better to have people in there than, I guess, not at all, if the shoe doesn't fit kind of thing.
I think that, yes, definitely, use would keep, is upkeep, 100%. I think what you're asking, Nick, is, or what the commission is asking is whether the HPC would be amenable to a house that's new in the back of the historic house that's not in keeping with the character of the historic structure. And by definition, if that historic structure is still somehow defined as subordinate, then you'd have this monster of a house on the backside that is not in keeping
That's, yeah.
at all, just by scale.
One modification, if I could, not even getting into character, just like massing.
Massing.
Like,
right.
just like keeping it simple and going into like mass scale looming. Even if we, even if sun and all that was accommodated for, just the idea of a 2-story home behind a 1-story home. There you go, right. We do get into a massive, like a kind of we talk about building envelope in this valley that is a 2D practice. We don't often get into it as a 3D practice for you guys that have done work in other places. I'm sure you've done 3D building envelopes. A lot of times that can be a component of this discussion with ADUs and secondary structures and the conversation between primary and secondary and how that might work. We're getting pretty complicated pretty quick here, and we're in the weeds. So I'm gonna maybe reel us back.
Yeah, we've been gathering comments and discussion points and
Yeah.
things like that since 2023. I think they have a lot to get done before we don't need.
So to pull us back a little bit, Jared, do you want to, how far down the rabbit hole do you want us to go tonight? Are there certain areas, do you want us to kind of focus on the feedback zones, feedback areas and regulations that you've already kind of outlined here for us? Or do you want us to find kind of pain and pleasure points in this to start from there? Maybe give us a little bit of bumper bowling, if you would.
Yeah, unless you guys disagree with the current code feedback that we provided, if you do disagree, let us know.
No, I think that's a great start. Right, current code feedback is.
In addition to that, I think it's kind of where you guys were going, but just staying at that higher level, not trying to solve it necessarily tonight. But, what are those topics that you want to see explored? And I think, new primary behind a existing home subordinate is an appropriate topic for us to look into.
Or threshold
Yes.
between.
I think, is there an appetite from the Planning Zoning Commission to relinquish your guys' review and just have it a administrative review process, whether it's a conditional use or whether it's just go straight to a building permit, or we do an administrative site plan review or something like that. So I think that's something
Let's check that one off really quick. If we could just pause there. Could we go around the horn maybe and just see what each person maybe is like? Is there an opinion on this where you would be open to this commission relinquishing versus what areas or aspects of regulation of ADUs you think should stay? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be exact, but maybe just some things that are personal for you that, in your experiences. You want to start, can I throw you into the bus first? Cindy?
Sure, I would say yes. Make it administrative unless it has some kind of issue or special use or some kind of condition that Jared or the administration thinks needs to be reviewed a little closer. I mean, we're trying to cut the process down, and that's the first step. I would say for sure.
Okay, thanks. Ann, what are your thoughts?
I would be comfortable removing minor site plan reviews if it's an ADU in the existing footprint. I get more worried about adding square footage and the desire to not have your own property be impacted by a rental unit. So but that maybe could be handled with how we write the code. You know, if there are additional setbacks from the neighbors, you know, if you wanted to build an additional unit to circumvent having to have a site plan review. Because it is a big difference if someone's building a second story and it overlooks your backyard and they intend to Airbnb it, but they'll tell you that it's for teachers. But we all know that doesn't necessarily happen.
Commission's never heard that
architects
excuse
never lie.
before.
What's that?
We never lie.
Never.
Great, thanks. Jesse?
I agree with Cindy. If it's like Jared, you mentioned the example of a basement ADU. I think that could be a pretty straightforward administrative review, where it impacts as far as massing a lot and having a little bit more effect on neighbors and such. I think that one would be appropriate for a P and Z review.
So you mean you agree with Ann?
Yeah, as far as, adding,
Okay.
another structure to the property.
Okay, cool, thank you.
I think P and Z should review anything that affects site and neighbors. So if we're, I guess with the exemption of like, if it's a single story addition attached to your house, that's not really gonna affect your neighbor a whole heck of a lot. But if it's a unit above the first story threshold, you are then casting shadow, you are invading privacy, you have other considerations that I think your neighbors need a fair and just platform to express disinterest or things like that. You know, I think we're here to represent a community. I think we should give them a platform to speak on, right? And if
Well, that also affects attached, detached, because as it stands
Right.
now.
so, if we're
So
detached,
if it detaches, then it may be
I-
different.
yes.
yeah.
So if it's detached, I
Then
believe
it's-
that P and Z should have
Which right
review of
now,
it. If it's attached
they
single
are.
story, you're
Yeah.
not gonna suddenly change materials and make it look out of character with the rest of the house. But if you're on a second story level, you're affecting your neighbor. So I think that's where our threshold comes in, right? Of like, I think it's a planar thing, not a footprint thing.
Got it. Okay. Franco, thoughts? Oh, sorry, I was, sorry, Nick. Sorry.
No, he's gonna circle back, sir.
True last.
I
Sure, it blends in with
very,
the green
I was
plan.
saving best for last.
Totally, I get it.
No offense intended.
No, I'm probably a little more liberal on this one. I think that we should allow administrative review for anything that falls outside of OTR or HCC. With the exception of, I still think some sort of notice within 300 feet is required. And if somebody decides to write a letter or make a phone call, that would trigger a public hearing and a commission review and recommendation and process to BOT.
So if there's disagreement between neighbors, that
Yeah.
would trigger our review.
Yeah, like,
I
so
like that.
I wanna do a detached ADU. I've got, plenty of room for it, for straight zoning. It would be a staff review, but it still needs to go out to everyone within 300 feet. And then there's a 90-day, waiting period for comments from the neighbors. And if the neighbor says, hey, this is blocking my view, so that then would trigger
Yeah.
a commission review,
I think that's great.
a public hearing.
Great, thanks, Nick. Now Franco, sorry.
I totally agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's, I do that now professionally, so administrative site plans. Noticing, and if a neighbor objects, then yeah, we could be the objecting body, or I don't know exactly how the review process goes. I do agree with Jarrett that, it is with these smaller lots, 2 stories is a little bit more, you lose your privacy in your backyard than just a 1-story structure. So I don't know if that's something that, we want to differentiate with massing if a 1-story under 15 feet can have a faster process than a 2-story structure. I know at the end of the day, we're only getting a handful, I guess, within the couple of years. And so we want to make this an easier process and not have you guys write so many memos.
Devil's advocate on this. One of the things the Board of Trustees wants us to do is make it easier. Do we make it more tedious? Not that, I'm not saying whether it's good or bad regulation, but is it more tedious to have those specifics on when it goes to public review?
From my perspective as an architect, if you
Mhm.
find a way to grease me through, I'll take the greased way every time. Like
Greasy-
if
greasy guy.
if I am, like, if I'm not gonna have a review and I can get this in, if I keep it on the lower level and keep it within a certain amount
So,
of
so you feel
boundaries,
it's an adequate
I
way to
will
control
laser that
what
one
we'd
in
like
every
to
time.
see and let those go through faster?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then like, that's, I mean, that's just your due diligence as a designer, right? You say, this is the quickest, cheapest, easiest
Mhm.
way to go through the process.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I just, I'm always concerned with Board of Trustees saying, but we told you to make it easier.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily easier, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I just, want
Well,
to know
it-
what people think about that. That's all.
I think this one also, though, just to go, this discussion point isn't about ease, it's about time and money.
Right.
Right. And I think we are trying to figure out a way to remove 1 month plus of time from an applicant plus whatever. Do we know approximately dollars, cash? We don't know about their time, but what does it cost to go through this application?
Minor site plans, $500, sending notices, 50 roughly, posting, time of someone attending a meeting to represent your application. You're probably
Call it
$1,000.
Yeah.
No impact fees, Jared?
Nope.
Tariffs, no impact fees.
How about,
I don't believe I don't believe the fire district has impact fees on ADUs.
is there connection fees for sewer and water?
Yes.
Yes.
How much are those?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That gets pricier, for sure.
Or even just waiting a month to begin construction sometimes.
Yes, depending on how loans are situated and
Mhm.
provided. I think that's a lot of great comments. One thing, I mean, what I would add to this is, maybe it's an oversimplification, that I'm sure you guys can throw some darts at. But in my mind, there's an elevation from the street. And if the ADU breaks the current elevation, sides or top, then to me, that has the impact on neighbors or street character. So I kind of start from that a little bit, where if it's coming outside of the current size of the whatever's buildings on the parcel, then we get into, how close are we getting, so that we get into that privacy piece. And if it's coming over the top, then we get into that discussion over kind of primary versus subordinate, I guess. So very simplified take, but if it isn't going to impact the neighborhood, if it isn't going to be seen from the street, I would be open to allowing for a change in footprint. Now there is, of course, the argument for the rear neighbor, but with it being administrative, I guess. And just adding on, I think all the other points we've made, I think you guys, I really appreciated, Nick and Jared, your points made. Does that give staff enough to start out with as far as the administrative versus relinquishing of from P and Z discussion?
Yeah.
Great.
Shall we move?
One quick item, I don't know that where this falls, On page 4 of the staff report, the implementation matrix, you had 3 bullet points. Number 3.4.2 is educate homeowners. I would love us to consider just getting that going, like yesterday, kind of thing, like just to get this is, I know staff's gonna do that, hopefully, if when this commission makes a recommendation tonight that allows this to open up. But just letting the town kind of percolate in this for a while. We know we have a highly educated community, a highly passionate community. And so letting this kind of be on the streets for as long as possible with information that's coming from the town, so which I tend to think is more objective, I think would be really helpful. And then last point I'd like to make, I forgot, and I think this is pretty consistent with what I said in the past. It's always easier to dial things up. It tends to be harder to dial things back. I think,
You mean in terms of regulation?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to unwind
yeah.
from regulation.
So as excited as I think a lot of us are, myself included, for the potential of how this could help our community, our residents, we can put one toe in the water at a time with this. Sorry for the poor metaphor, but we can ease our way in. I don't know if it has to be like a boom, we have the perfect answer on day 1. We're just waiting for our 30 days to implement.
I just know I'm very much looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah.
And hearing what the public has to say too as well.
I would also just like to add the parking component to the conversation, if it's okay. I think we're overparked, and the number of parking spaces for an ADU seems a little excessive.
Yeah. Agreed.
Let's just unwind from that. It would be so easy.
Yeah,
Gary.
Jared, I had a question. Since we're looking at it as kind of big perspective, I'm wondering if BOT or staff would entertain. I know from the work session that we sat through with BOT, Mayor Ben mentioned that he wanted to make it easier. I think that's one reoccurring thing that I heard is that he wanted to make it easier. I'm wondering if the town would be flexible to incentivize. I don't know if there'd be like a financial incentive, or if it's resident occupied for 5 years and they have a certain threshold for income, if they can provide an incentive, because I think although it's an exciting opportunity, I think we get into the arena of trying to solve a money problem. And if homeowners just can't do it because of the finances with cost per square foot to develop in Carbondale, wondering if the town would be willing to incentivize those that did want to do maybe like a 5-year commitment to being resident occupied, no short-term rental, or if they wanted to do less time, or if they wanted to waive the sewer and water tap fees, the application fee, maybe some sort of incentive to get those homeowners that are looking to get in the door through the program a little bit easier. That would complement the ease of the application, hopefully.
Yeah, certainly. I think what is probably appropriate for this body is to, discuss what those potential trade-offs could be and include that in a recommendation up to the Board of Trustees as something that you think, there'd be an appetite to say, or the town should explore your example of, waiving fees in general for a restriction on short-term rentals, or, a restriction on some other type of rental, or like an AMI rental restriction or something like that. So I think that would be appropriate, or if those trade-offs are something else, such as a, increased ADU size for that trade-off of a local occupant required rental. So I think those are probably worth this body kind of kicking the tires on and making a recommendation up.
But
to the
Jared,
DOT on
at this point, ADUs don't have a separate tap or sewer. They have to use the existing one.
Correct.
So.
But they still have to pay
They
an
have fees.
incremental increase in
Fees.
the usage.
Okay.
Can I just comment on that? Can I say something?
No, no.
not?
Franco can, but you
You're
can't.
on
Are you saying
Go.
something next? So go ahead.
I love the idea of RO housing. But if I'm a property owner in town of Carbondale and I want to put an ADU on that property, I don't feel great about the idea of somebody else overseeing or having some say in who I rent that ADU
Yeah.
to. So if we're gonna put deed restrictions on ADUs, how does the homeowner still manage their own property? Because somebody needs to oversee that, Garfield County or town of Carbondale, or somebody's gonna be overseeing and potentially telling me, the homeowner, who I'm going to rent to,
Which inherently makes it less easy.
which makes it less easy and just not great feeling. I'm losing my rights as.
Well, and somebody has to police it. I mean,
That's
who's,
right.
who's gonna
Who's
go around
enforcing?
and say to Nick, who's living in your
Who's
ADU?
enforcing?
Yeah, no, it's not gonna be policed. We
Hold on.
don't have the
So-
capacity to
so-
do
so I
that.
think-
It's just food, we don't need, I don't even, I'm trying to solve this problem,
Yeah.
but it's kind of
These
an
are-
icky feeling to hand over that responsibility to somebody else. I don't know the answer. I don't know,
To,
but it's.
to play devil's advocate on
Please.
that though, you don't have to take the money.
Right,
It's a trade-off. You
That's
can
the
say, I
trade-off.
don't want that.
It would have to be a lot of money for me to relinquish that
So,
right.
so it's I can't afford to do it, but I really want to do it. Okay, I'll take that trade-off.
It has to be worth it,
Um,
Yeah.
just food for thought, but yeah.
100%. It has to be some pretty good incentive.
Right, and that's the same of like all these rules that we're adding or looking to add as far as when we do come into review, it's like we're giving you the out. So you can take the out, or if your neighbors complain, you gotta come to us. So talk to your neighbors, do your due diligence, do your work. And then we don't have to have our opinions on your house.
And from just going back a little bit to Nicholas's comment earlier about we don't have to solve everything today. I think
Right.
one good example of that is when we were discussing impervious lot coverage. There was a discussion of saying, how do we not punish people for parking? And there was a conscious decision at that time to say, okay, let's exempt the parking spaces
ADUs.
from the impervious lot coverage maximum for those required to ADU. That way we're getting the benefit of the ADU parking spaces, but not restricting development. And so, I think that's a good example of it was an incremental step. Ultimately, these regulations could get rid of that. And it could just say no parking or one parking or 7 parking spaces or whatever it is. But to that point, I don't think just because we adopt something, we have to live with it for the next 20 years. It could be let's test it out. If it's not working in a couple years, okay, we can open the book and re-examine something or try to take that next step with the regulations. So.
And I think Jared made a good point earlier from an architect perspective. And I'll speak from a group that a lot of my clients are developers. There's a lot of rosy things on this. There's a lot of ways that I think it can also be spun. So I think we need to be careful as we're going through this as well from those perspectives. It isn't all positive. It could get enough people who have enough to gain. Things can be twisted quickly, and a small town can get run over. So just want to keep those balances in respect.
Exactly.
If that's okay.
Something that I've also dealt with on the flip side of places getting run over, a lot of people are getting priced out of the valley, of course. And a lot of people ask about tiny homes. modulars, not to put an architect out of business, but families are moving back to the valley and they want to be able to stay in the valley. So the best way that they find is, plopping a modular home in their backyard or on their property, in other places, other jurisdictions, of course, and renting it out or renting it out to a family member. So I don't know if this is something that has been studied, because we have a limit on, maximum square footage of ADUs, is say someone does want to put a modular home on their property as an ADU, what are the factories making? What is the most affordable way that we can get an ADU on a property? Is not a stick-built, site-built development. It's modular development, prefab. And so, we don't want to be just limiting our square footage, based on a theoretical number. We want to be maybe backing it up with what are the factories developing for a 2-bedroom, maybe even a 3-bedroom.
That's right. I think those are the things we want to address. Like, we want to address detached units versus attached. We want to address square footage of lot size. Is it 6,000, or can we, could you lower the lot size for ADU? Whatever it is. And when you go through the code, it is confusing. In some places it says detached, and some places it says attached, and square footage. I just like the 6,000 for residential low density, and then there's nothing in the table for medium and high density, which I'm assuming is the 3,000. I just think that's what we're charged with, trying to make it clear for people in the code so that they know what they can do if they want an ADU.
I actually might counter that, if I respectfully. I think that's staff's job, is to make
Is it?
it easier for residents. I think I'm sorry, this is not trying to throw you an ass under the bus, but I think
I'm listening.
Giving him another job.
I think of, the three of you over there as are like the resident knowledge professionals who get to be in that. I think what we're trying to do is to go back to Ben's request to make it easy.
Right.
So to help with the concept and help with what are the points of pain, can we round those off? Can we identify, how it can be better for this community, more fitting for this community, and an easier process? But I think we look to staff as far as initiating this code, text amendment, where hopefully as part of your process, I would imagine you all are going to go through the code is kind of in a networked kind of analysis and say which strings are going to pull on which different sections. And hopefully I would, again, imagine you want to make it easier for yourself. And then,
But
by
aren't we
association,
deciding, as
applicants.
Ben said, right? Like, aren't we looking at whether it should be attached or detached? If
Oh,
they're
yeah.
acceptable or not? Right,
Yeah.
right. That's what we're looking at. Then Jared has to change it in the code. That's his job. We'll tell you.
Is that fair? Again, it
Is that
wasn't
right?
meaning to.
Okay,
Yeah, no, we're
Okay.
not expecting you guys to come up with all the language.
right.
We're hearing concepts. We'll
Right.
come back with recommended language that we think is easy to apply, easy to understand. And it's kind of up to you guys to say that hits
Right.
the mark of what we're thinking, and that is, or that hits the mark, but that's not easy to understand.
Yeah.
Try again.
Right. To keep us moving. Oh, yeah.
I just, one more thing, and then I'll turn off my mic for the rest of the night.
Well, it wouldn't be as fun. I don't know.
Do we have a list of PUDs that are amenable to?
It's in the back end of the document.
It is?
Yes.
But
Updating that. So that's a list of all the PUDs we're looking at.
That's right, not the back. It's like right before.
But Jared, if they had a blank spot, did that mean
Attachment
you
B,
didn't
sorry.
Yeah, there's a
know?
link to it.
Or they
Sorry.
did not
No, I just
accept?
Outed myself.
So that's where
Okay, I
we're
see it.
we're going
You're trying
through
to
and
update this.
we're gonna simplify this document a little bit.
Okay,
Where we're gonna make here's the PUD does it, explicitly allow? Does it
Mhm.
explicitly prohibit? Or is there some gray area? And if so, how do we categorize that gray area in a overly simplistic manner? So is it, it allows it but requires area restrictions. It allows it but requires conditional use permits. It allows it but
Right.
only if it's a pink roofed home with shake shingle siding.
So these ones that you
That
have
sounds
blank,
horrible.
you're still, this is a work in progress. You're
At least
still
flammable.
figuring those out.
Yes,
Okay,
but what we're gonna do is come back and say, if there's no information,
yeah,
Yeah.
we can make the determination that the PUD doesn't supersede the uses permitted, and therefore the uses permitted just by that zone district, underlying zone district, are gonna be allowing it or prohibiting it.
And just, if I can just, and one last area, if I can be so bold, just to kind of keep us, like, bring this thing in for a landing. I think it would be helpful for this commission to, one last area that I'm thinking of is to just comment on ADUs and short-term rentals, before we end this tonight. Does that feel helpful to you, Jared, or is that going a little, okay? So we briefly touched on, the idea of owner occupied. And I think that next granular step down is short-term rentals, which I think, well, I'd like to hear all of your opinions on that. Where you're at as far as thresholds on that, or if you have areas that you'd like staff to kind of provide some guidance on in that.
you want just like a yes or no, we agree, they could be short-term rentals or they could not.
I think if it's that simple for you, that'd be great. If you have a deeper, more granular opinion, on like maybe yes over here, no over here, yes to a single bedroom, but no to a 3-bedroom. I'm just pulling stuff up here. I think just get it out, right? Like let's get it on Jared's notepad, just so it's kind of in the gears at this point. Because I think that's just again one of these points as a town that we're discussing more and more, and seeing what can happen in other communities where this opening up this kind of I think element to our community, you know, if short-term rentals could greatly, you know, be impacted by this. So how about you start this time, Frank? We'll go the other direction.
I just want to start out with House Bill 24-1152, which I guess adopted concerning increasing the number of accessory dwelling units in connection. I believe that's the one that we were talking about. Whatever, the state adopted it, approved it. And in the first declaration, accessory dwelling units offer a way to provide compact, relatively affordable housing in established neighborhoods with minimal impacts to infrastructure, and to supply new housing opportunities without added dispersed low-density housing. I don't see anything in there that says anything about short-term rentals, so, and I'm pretty against short-term rentals as a way of, you know, what an ADU can provide. So that's my opinion on that.
Resident occupied housing is something that I really am in support of. I like the idea of providing housing to locals, people who can prove that they're locals, people who aren't, you know, there's like a whole, you know, thing within that category. I also kind of like the idea of resident occupied owned units. So can you sell that unit, that ADU in the market as an RO house? That'd be kind of an interesting thing to explore as well.
Yeah, that would be splitting up property. Ooh,
Jared's taking
That would
turns.
be-
I'll tell you, we're
That's
not gonna,
messy.
there's all sorts of roadblocks on that, and that's not gonna be something
That was a whole
we'll
vat of crazy
pursue.
juice right there.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, you have to subdivide. I don't know how you do it, but
I think maybe,
there's plenty of condos where you don't own the dirt.
maybe
Well, a
down the
condominiumization
road.
is that fact.
That
You
is
don't
all
own-
the condos, right? Otherwise, it's a townhome.
Correct.
Right? So
You own
so it is
base forward
possible
to.
to condominiumize Is it possible?
So you're
Well,
wading
let's-
up
let's
to your
reel it in.
knees.
This is start closing.
Yeah, we
I love the
don't go
creativity,
there. Let's
but
stick out
but
of
you
it.
know, with respect.
I mean, if we're gonna allow deed restricting, I'd be all for.
So
our-
no short-term rentals.
No.
No, so no short-term rentals.
Okay, so we have two no.
Okay, that's the question.
That actually was in fact the question.
I'm not gonna, yes, no. Yes, I would be in favor of. I'm gonna pass. I don't know.
You
So,
can't.
so Nick's a yes, no pass.
Okay.
Yes, no pass.
All right.
Because I'm not really in support of deed restricting.
Right.
And that's a deed restriction.
It is.
I don't like alphabet soup. When you're mixing too many ADU, HOA, STR, no thank you. I don't think they go together.
So no short-term rentals.
No short-term rentals.
Okay, just that simple. Okay, Jesse.
I think it'd be a good opportunity to leave it up to the owners, but I know that with that short-term rental implementation, it would then trigger more staff policing, which I know we discussed earlier, and I don't know that staff would want to take that on. I'm not necessarily against it. I think it'd just be a matter of whether staff wanted to take that on. I know a lot of the municipalities around us have a designated person to go around and kind of take inventory and police that. I don't know if the town of Carbondale is necessarily moving in that direction or if they anticipate moving in that direction, but yeah, I would leave it more to town staff.
I think for our first delving into ADUs, I would be a no on short-term rentals. Because I think ADUs without short-term rentals are an easy sell to the community. But STRs do have impact on the neighbors. It's not fun. I've had several in my neighborhood that they learned it wasn't fun and stopped renting them, thank God. But it's a much bigger impact than having one renter long-term, because you can't have the same conversation every weekend. You know, if that's happening with a renter, that renter gets evicted. But you can be stuck in that loop with an STR, so I'm a no. And I think that's a safe place for us to be as a board on this first iteration.
Cindy.
Well, I would say yes. I think people should be able, if they have them and they want to use them as short-term rentals. I mean, that's a hassle as much as a hassle as having a long-term renter in some cases. So I think it should be left to the owner. I mean, they'd have to license it and there's taxes and there's all kinds of hoops to jump through for those short-term rentals, but I think, a short-term rental, it's defined as 30 days, so people can rent it for 2 months, and now there's, furnished finders and things that you rent them for 2 and 3 months to traveling nurses, and it's just I'm not sure we want to go down that road.
It's interesting. I have the neighbors next to us have a 4,000 square foot house that they allow people to, family and friends just to come and go within. Very kind. And we notice the difference instantly from the folks who are there for 2 or 3 months versus the ones that are there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The energy, the care, the ones that are there for 2 or 3 weeks typically won't say hi. They tend to be out much later in the backyard, much less consideration for all, and they're the only ones in the neighborhood that have the situation. And then the ones that are there for longer portions of the year, they say, hi, what's your name? They'll come over, they'll hang out, they'll want to create some level of connection and this idea of neighborliness, I'll say. So just it's anecdotal, but I think it's something that just to kind of share with, where that idea of short term is interesting. That threshold of short term is something to consider. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the rental period for definition of short-term rental should be different? I mean, sales tax law is 30 days for Colorado. But are you saying 6 weeks is different than 3 weeks? Or are you saying months are different from weeks?
I know a few folks in a few both legal and illegal ADUs right now where where same folks come each year on seasons, and they will be there, they will work from this location, and they provide a community benefit. They also, they do what they do. They're there for 3 months. To me, that's short term, but in this case, that feels like it works in a way that again could be a net positive, and is not like a revolving door kind of short term. That's just my opinion, though. It's a very subjective situation.
Yeah.
I think I would love to hear from the community on
Is-
what,
yeah.
if there's a threshold change here.
Is there a limit maybe on how many times it could be rented per year?
That's interesting.
That maybe that's a solution that takes care of, it gives people the opportunity for short-term rental on a big week that they don't want to be here. But also renting out the unit for a longer time period during the year.
But this gets back into then.
Policing is a
Don't come on my
problem.
property.
Right.
And who's gonna enforce it? I'm pointing at the town.
But there's also, if you want to have a hotel, then you're paying commercial property taxes.
These aren't hotels, though.
But they function as one. If they're purely short-term, they definitely function as a hotel. And that's, I think, part of the problem with people's animosity towards ADUs. Because there's a reason they're in certain zoning districts.
They did that in Telluride. They had the 3 times you could rent your house. Short term, bluegrass, mountain film, and jazz. But you had 3, and the lawyer that did it, they had a full-time lawyer doing that, enforcing that. So.
Easily monitor it by installing separate water taps.
So like Mountain Fair, fashion show.
Yeah, exactly. Mountain Fair fashion show.
Like, okay, this person has like spikes in water usage. Oh, I see. Watch the water bill. And then it's STR after the fact. Need to police anything. That's terrifying.
Really?
That level of government, I'm
Don't
sorry.
turn on the
Okay.
shower.
Gonna reel us in. Any parting,
Yeah, no.
thank you. Any parting comments? Did you all feel that this was helpful? Did we miss anything in this conversation, Anne?
I think one of the things the Board of Trustees wants us to try to do is getting those illegal ADUs to come into the fold. Because that is a public health and safety issue if a basement is being rented out, but it, doesn't have firewalls or doesn't have, even just fire alarms, smoke detectors. Is there a way through this process that we can encourage them to come in, get inspected?
Ooh.
How do we do that?
I'm not gonna go near that one right now. We're getting respectfully, I feel like
fine.
if we stay the straight and narrow on this larger thing, again, just my 2 cents, but the win-loss on existing out of compliance versus the potential to really figure out this in a way that is considerate, beneficial, and highly functional, I think is more important. Use of our time and staff time right now. Is that okay? Does anyone want to disagree with that? Please feel free.
No, I agree, and I think just making the process simpler will bring people out of the woodwork.
I think that's right.
Okay, great. So with that, unless there are any other opinions or people want to add anything else into Kay's list,
I would like to move to initiate the amendment to the Unified Development Code for the purpose of reviewing regulations related to accessory dwelling units and direct town staff to prepare an application and all necessary public notices.
I'll second that.
Okay, first to Jared, second to Nick. Can we take a vote on that?
Aye.
I,
Aye, the ayes have it. Full board. Great, thank you all for the thoughtful and intelligent conversation. Thank you, everybody, for weighing in, showing up in person with bells on. Meeting adjourned. Oh, wait, no,
Yep, hold on.
sorry, step update. I got really excited there. He's got nothing.
Great, now.
Then,
Commissioner comments? I just wanted to say thank you again to all of you for, again, sorry I missed the last 2 meetings. I think you'll know why, and thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. Peace.
Bye, everybody.
Enjoy Mountain Fair or enjoy